prize for passengers was supposed to be life-changing, seeing firsthand the most iconic shipwreck in history, the Titanic.
It's been 3 years since the Titan submersible implosion. But what if there was more to what happened than what you were told? 5 people died that day under extreme pressure in the North Atlantic. But the story goes deeper than pressure alone. Much deeper. This is what really happened in 2023 with the Titan submersible. How it all began. On June 18, 2023, a tragedy unlike any other unfolded in the North Atlantic Ocean near Newfoundland, Canada. Titan was a submersible operated by OceanGate, an American company known for deep-sea expeditions. This mission was supposed to be different for all the right reasons. Instead, it became infamous for all the wrong ones. The sub was headed to the wreck of the Titanic, marketed as a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But during the dive, Titan imploded, killing all 5 people on board. Among the victims were 4 adult men and a young boy. Nearly 2 years later, their families still carry a loss they never saw coming. So to understand how this happened, we have to go back to the beginning. And the way this story ends may surprise you. OceanGate and the Titanic Dream. OceanGate was founded in 2009 by Stockton Rush and Guillermo Schinlein. Their vision was to make deep-sea exploration more accessible to people who had both the interest and the budget for it. In a 2019 interview with Smithsonian Magazine, Rush explained the appeal in simple terms. In his words, there's only one wreck that everyone knows. If you ask people to name something underwater, it's going to be sharks, whales, Titanic. From 2010 until the Titan disaster in 2023, Rush built OceanGate around that fascination. The company offered commercial submersible trips for paying customers in places like the waters of California, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Atlantic Ocean. But over time, Rush began to see shipwreck exploration as more than an adventure. He saw it as a powerful way to attract media attention. So he set out to plan the most historic dive of all, a trip to the Titanic. Bookings for the expedition opened in early 2023. Rush personally contacted American businessman Jay Bloom and offered him and his son 2 seats, not at the full price of $250,000 per person, but at a discounted rate of $150,000 each. Rush reportedly told Bloom the trip was completely safe, even claiming it was safer than crossing the street. Bloom declined. He had serious concerns about the safety of the dive, concerns he could not ignore. The expedition was originally scheduled for May, but poor weather pushed it to June. That delay gave Bloom and his son more time to consider the offer. In hindsight, it saved their lives. Mission 5. On June 16, 2023, at exactly 9:31 a.m., the expedition to the Titanic, also called Mission 5, officially began. Rush was reportedly in high spirits. The voyage departed from St. John's, Newfoundland, aboard the Canadian research and support vessel Polar Prince. One of the passengers was Hamish Harding, a British billionaire and adventurer. Before the trip, Harding posted on Facebook that because Newfoundland had experienced its worst winter in 40 years, this mission would likely be the first and only crewed mission to the Titanic in 2023. He wrote that a weather window had just opened, and they would attempt a dive the next day. He also said operations would begin very early the following morning, around 4 a.m. He had no idea what that morning would become. The final descent. In the early hours of June 18, 2023, Polar Prince arrived near the Titanic wreck site at approximately 5:15 a.m. By 8:30 a.m., the 5 people on the expedition had been loaded into Titan. The submersible was positioned atop a floating platform called the Launch and Recovery System, designed to assist with descent and retrieval. Once everyone was aboard, Titan's forward dome was sealed shut. OceanGate described this as Dive 88. At 8:55 a.m., the floating platform was vented and sank below the surface, allowing Titan to prepare for descent. At 9:18 a.m., Titan separated from the platform and began its dive. For the first hour and a half, everything appeared normal. Titan sent text updates to Polar Prince every 15 minutes. It also transmitted a data signal, a ping, every 5 to 10 seconds to confirm the connection remained intact. At a depth of 2,274 meters, Titan sent a reassuring message, "All good here." The pings kept coming. The descent appeared routine. Nothing seemed wrong. Then, at 10:47 a.m., at an approximate depth of 3,341 meters, Titan sent a final troubling message, dropped 2 doublets, likely referring to the release of weights used to control buoyancy during deep dives. That was the last text ever received. Just seconds later, at 10:47 a.m., Titan's final ping came through. Then, the silence began. The moment everything changed. On board Polar Prince, the crew waited for more signals. None came. Suspicion began to grow. Hours after Titan submerged, the U.S. Navy's acoustic detection system, designed to detect military submarine sounds, picked up an unusual acoustic signal. Experts would later say it was consistent with an implosion, the catastrophic failure of a submersible under crushing pressure at extreme depth. Titan had been expected to resurface at 4:30 p.m., but by 7:10 p.m., there was still no sign of it. By then, they knew something had gone terribly wrong. The search. The U.S. Coast Guard was notified immediately, and within minutes, an official search operation began. At the same time, the Navy re-examined its acoustic data and detected signs that something may have gone wrong during the dive. That information was passed to the Coast Guard, but officials still did not want to jump to conclusions. Maybe Titan had only lost communication. After all, the sub was believed to carry enough breathable air for 5 passengers to survive up to 96 hours. If they were stranded, that gave rescuers a narrow but vital window. But that window, as it turned out, had never really been open. The U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Navy, and Canadian Coast Guard led the operation. Aircraft from the Royal Canadian Air Force and the United States Air National Guard searched from above. A Royal Canadian Navy ship joined the mission at sea. Commercial and research vessels were also brought in, many equipped with advanced technology, including remotely operated underwater vehicles to search the deep ocean where Titan was most likely lost. On the surface, crews scanned for debris and wreckage. Below, sonar mapped the seafloor. Every method available was used, but it was already too late. Bad weather made the search even harder. Visibility was poor, and crews struggled to work as effectively as they needed to. Conditions improved slightly the next day, but the sea remained rough, and the cold Atlantic waters made everything worse. Rescuers then realized the fastest route to locating Titan might have been an acoustic beacon, special equipment many submersibles carry to help rescuers pinpoint them underwater. But Titan didn't have one. The discovery. At 1:18 p.m. on June 22, the U.S. Coast Guard's Northeast Sector announced that a debris field had been found near the Titanic wreck. Later, in early October, engineers recovered additional debris from the ocean floor, along with what they believed to be human remains. Because of the force of the implosion, they could not immediately tell for certain. The impact had crushed all 5 passengers down to bone. Simulations developed in 2023 showed the implosion likely happened in less than 1 second. More precise estimates suggest it occurred in tens of milliseconds, faster than the human brain can fully process what is happening. It happened so quickly that the people on board would not have experienced the full force of the hull collapsing. Their bodies disintegrated almost instantly. The disaster was over before they could even register it. The remains, along with other evidence, were sent for identification. The Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory analyzed the samples. The results were clear. DNA from the 5 men was found throughout the remains of the sub, and when the investigation began in earnest, it uncovered something else. Stockton Rush had been surrounded by warning signs for years. Rush had many issues. Investigators spent months trying to understand what contributed to the disaster. One of the most disturbing testimonies came from David Lockridge, OceanGate's former operations director. Back in 2016, OceanGate was using another submersible, Cyclops 1, to explore the wreck of the Andrea Doria. The Andrea Doria was an Italian passenger liner that sank in the Atlantic Ocean on the night of July 25 to 26, 1956, after colliding with the Swedish ship Stockholm off Nantucket, Massachusetts. At the time, it was considered one of Italy's most impressive ships, the largest, fastest, and believed to be the safest liner in the Italian fleet. Of the 1,706 passengers and crew aboard, 1,660 survived thanks to nearby ships and rescue operations. But 46 people on Andrea Doria died. On Stockholm, which was also heavily damaged, 5 crew members were killed. Lockridge said OceanGate organized a dive to visit that wreck site, and as the most experienced pilot on the team, he expected to operate the sub. But Stockton Rush insisted on piloting it himself. Lockridge objected. He testified that Rush sometimes made decisions based on personal preference rather than what was best for the situation. According to Lockridge, Rush shut him down with a cold reminder, "Just remember, I'm the CEO, you're just an employee." Even so, Lockridge persuaded Rush to let him join the dive. 3 paying passengers were also aboard. Problems began almost immediately. Lockridge said Rush struggled to initiate the dive and seemed unable to get the submersible to respond properly. He tried to help, but Rush refused to listen, to him or anyone else. Rush also ignored standard safety procedures. An experienced submersible pilot was supposed to pause and carefully assess the surroundings before proceeding, especially in conditions where visibility was poor. According to Lockridge, Rush resisted that advice and kept arguing inside the sub. Each time Lockridge tried to intervene and reach for the controller, Rush pushed it farther away to keep it out of reach. Lockridge said he was actively assessing the outside situation, while Rush stayed in the back and never once got up to evaluate conditions himself. As the dive continued, Lockridge reminded Rush that at that depth they needed to maintain a safe distance from the wreck. Getting too close was dangerous for both the submersible and everyone inside. Rush brushed him off. He told Lockridge not to tell him what to do. Then Rush did what he seemed to do best. He rushed. And it went badly. He drove the submersible straight down onto the seafloor. The impact kicked up a cloud of sediment and made visibility nearly impossible. It was now obvious they were directly on top of the wreck, the exact scenario they had tried to avoid. Inside the sub, panic erupted. One of the paying passengers, terrified and furious, began screaming and swearing at Rush, demanding he hand over the controller. Only then, at the breaking point, did Rush give it up. But even that was chaotic. Instead of handing it over calmly, he threw the controller at Lockridge. It hit him on the right side of the head before crashing to the floor, breaking one of its buttons. Lockridge picked it up, fixed the broken button, took control, and within 15 minutes navigated them out of danger and back to safety. Afterward, Rush reportedly seemed apologetic. He appeared to regret how the dive had unfolded. When they surfaced, the other passengers were relieved and grateful. They praised Lockridge for stepping in before things got worse, but the relationship between the two men never recovered. According to Lockridge, something shifted after that dive. At one point, Rush stopped speaking to him entirely. By 2018, David Lockridge had been fired from OceanGate after clashing with the company over its diving practices, especially the development of Titan. He had serious safety concerns and openly voiced them. Those disagreements eventually led to lawsuits from both sides, though the legal battle was later settled. Still, Lockridge said he always believed something would eventually go wrong at OceanGate. He just didn't know when. The warnings before the final voyage. After Lockridge's testimony, investigators turned to problems in OceanGate's more recent dives, especially the one immediately before Titan's final mission. They were looking for patterns, and they found them. Dr. Stephen Ross, OceanGate's former scientific director, testified about the second-to-last expedition to the Titanic wreck. According to Ross, that dive had to be aborted because of a malfunction in the platform Titan was mounted on. The malfunction triggered a chain of problems that ultimately caused the pilot to crash into the rear bulkhead of the submersible. Inside the cramped cabin, one passenger even ended up upside down. No one was injured, and the dive was called off. But Ross said it was obvious there were serious issues the surface team needed to address. Another witness, Renata Rojas, a banker who had previously dived to the Titanic wreck aboard the experimental submersible, was part of the surface crew during the 2023 expedition. She was not diving that time, she was volunteering to help. During her testimony, she became emotional while recalling June 18, 2023. The hearing paused for 10 minutes to let her collect herself. Investigators then asked her about the dive just before Titan's final mission. Rojas said that as Titan was returning to the surface during that earlier dive, a loud bang was heard, something that immediately caused concern. Ross explained he had been told the noise likely came from the pressure hull shifting within its steel or metal cradle. When it snapped back into place, it may have produced the bang. But despite how serious that sounded, Ross testified that, as far as he knew, no visual inspection of the interior of the hull was carried out afterward, and Rush, according to the testimony, never made a real effort to determine exactly what had gone wrong in that aborted dive. That alone was alarming. What came next was worse. There were too many warnings. William Conan, chair of the Manned Underwater Vehicles Committee at the Marine Technology Society, explained that industry regulations for submersibles are generally strong, but OceanGate was able to avoid many of those rules by operating in international waters, where they did not fully apply. Conan's company, Hydrospace, had designed a window that OceanGate requested for Titan, but they had made one thing very clear. That window could not be used for deep-sea diving unless it underwent serious, thorough testing. In 2018, after repeated concerns about Rush's recklessness, a formal letter was sent directly to him. It was not written by just one person. It was signed by several industry experts, including William Conan, all expressing concerns about Titan's design and operation. The letter warned that OceanGate's experimental approach, combined with its refusal to have Titan inspected by a top certification agency, could lead to severe problems, even catastrophic ones. They said they shared unanimous concern about how Titan had been developed. Former passengers also described troubling problems, including repeated communication losses during dives. One CBS journalist who rode Titan in 2022 revealed that before boarding, passengers had to sign a detailed waiver. That waiver stated clearly that Titan was an experimental vessel, and more troubling still, that it had not been approved or certified by any regulatory body. Before the accident, Stockton Rush frequently criticized what he considered excessive industry safety rules. In a 2021 interview, he openly admitted to breaking rules while building Titan. He talked about OceanGate's decision to construct the hull using carbon fiber and titanium, even though the industry standard for deep-sea vessels relied on well-tested materials like solid steel or pure titanium. And after reading the warning letter from experts, Rush actually called William Conan. During that conversation, Rush argued that industry safety standards were only getting in the way of innovation and making it harder to push boundaries. A few years later, it became clear he had pushed far beyond boundaries. He had taken his own life, and 4 others with him. At the end of the day, the 5 lives lost on Titan, including Stockton Rush's own, come down to one devastating truth. If only Stockton Rush had listened. If you found this deep dive into the Titan sub-disaster insightful, don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more stories that uncover the details behind major events, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.